Hello again, this is Ilak, and I just want to deal with this New Testament thing again. This is a website I found reading it on my phone, and website's too long to read, but it seems to be saying CF devotionals dot something. I don't know if it's .org or what. And it seems the article here is titled Devotional 97-12-18, so that the Guardian, that might mean it was from 1997. I'm not sure. That could be the date, 18th of December 1997. But anyway, the title here, it seems to be a series, the Cross Series, Part 17. And this article has a subtitle, The Garden of Gethsemane. I'll read just a small part of their article just to show you what they're saying about the New Testament. Right? It seems that they're doing the common Christian presentation of letting you think that the Messiah or the Jesus of the New Testament is credible and is from the Creator because he seems to be fulfilling something from the Old Testament. But I'm going to show just common sense that there's a problem with this kind of thinking. Their article starts off saying, John 18 verse 1, when Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with his disciples over the ravine of the Kidron, where there was a garden into which he himself entered and his disciples. Luke 22:39, and he came out and proceeded as was his custom to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples also followed him. I think they're reading here, quoting here from the New American Standard Version, might be. If you look at a map of the city of Jerusalem, their article goes on saying, and the surrounding terrain, you'll notice to the east of the city, the Kidron Valley. On the other side of the Kidron Valley is the Mount of Olives. I have friends who have visited the area. Even today, the area is fairly peaceful considering the number of tourists and the bustling city nearby. Jesus came here to pray privately with his Father on that last night before he went to the cross. I've spoken of the meaning of Kidron earlier, but we'll review it again quickly. The word Kidron means black. Above the Kidron Valley sits the temple. During the Passover, over 250,000 lambs, so that's 250,000 lambs, would be slain for the sacrifices of the people. And that's what I'm going to make my point from at the end, the lambs that were slain. I'll go on reading their article. The blood would flow from the temple down the side of the hill leading to the Kidron Valley. The blood from the sacrifices would dry on that hillside and turn black. It was a stark reminder of the price of sin and the grace and mercy that God provided in his coming Messiah. The Romans cited this mass of blood drying on the hillside as a health hazard, and Herod had an aqueduct built to bring water to wash away the blood. The blood and rushing water would run down into the brook Kidron. Jesus must cross this black valley to reach the Mount of Olives and his favorite place to pray. Alright, so they're building Jesus into this whole Kidron Valley thing more just by saying, yeah, he has to cross the valley to get to the Mount of Olives, right? The Garden of Gethsemane. As the Lord crossed the brook, there would be no missing the water-tinted pinkish red with the blood of the sacrifice of 250,000 lambs. He would be reminded that his blood would be poured out as a sacrifice in the morning. He would cross the Black Valley again that night in the custody of soldiers. I'm impressed with the fact that Jesus is urgently seeking a place of no distractions to speak with his Father. His business is urgent indeed. The salvation of the race of humanity is at the crux of the matter. Time must now seem to be racing to the disciples as they leave the Passover minds, reeling from the things that Jesus had spoken to them and shown them. They must have known Jesus was going to pray. One or two might have hoped that he would reach the top of the Mount of Olives and keep right on marching. But Jesus has already made it abundantly clear that he is in Jerusalem to die. They quote here Hebrews 4:15, which says, "For we do not have a high priest which cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin." Jesus was tempted in every way like us. We have been given a survival instinct, a sense of extreme danger to protect us. Jesus was fully deity and yet every bit as human as you and I. But he had no sin nature for those temptations to take hold. He knew the cross was coming. It was not a guess. It was a fact. In the next few verses, we will see Jesus ask the Father if there was another way to save humanity, other than him going to the cross and bearing the sins of humanity. Even when the answer was no, he did not run. He did not invoke his deity. He prayed, and angels who would have drawn their swords for him at a word came and strengthened him. He prayed. All right, so I'll stop there. Now, they're trying to tie this New Testament Jesus, who they say is the Messiah that's coming to save the whole world, to the Kidron Valley. Of course, when you look more deeply and consider different angles of this whole Messiah coming to die for the whole world, you can see that there really is a common sense problem with Jesus coming to die for the sins of the whole world. You know, I just get sick of these one-sided views of Christians who are just locked in a zombie kind of frame of mind, where they completely ignore the Old Testament that they say the New Testament was built on. That same Old Testament that clearly shows that the Most High was dealing with a people he called Israel, and that they, in punishment, were kicked out of their land and so on, and he made a promise that, okay, I'm not going to cut you off forever. You know, he says, basically, I'm going to have mercy on you. I'm going to restore you eventually in the end. Yet, if a Messiah is coming, he's coming to save the whole world. If God is interested in saving the whole world, why doesn't he take care of the people who he was setting up to reach the whole world first, and then deal with the rest of the world? Isn't that what the scriptures actually say? You see, they're trying to give this Jesus so much credit. Let's run quickly here to the book of, let's run to Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 3. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain. Let's read from verse 2 first. Isaiah 2, verse 2 and 3. And it shall come to pass in the last days that the mountain of the Most High's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. But yet Christians, according to the Christian teaching and Christian gospel, is trying to let all nations run to Jesus. But this is saying that all nations shall flow unto the mountain of the Most High. That's dealing with the salvation for Israel, that Israel is going to be managing on behalf of the Most High for all nations to come unto. They're going to get a piece of the Most High through coming to Israel, to the children of Israel who are going to be established, right? Reestablished. And verse 3, and many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up. By the way, if all nations are going to come to the Most High, what happened to the Christian doctrine of the rapture? They're going to go to some faraway heaven and live forever and ever and live happily ever after. If all nations are coming, then if nations are being saved by the Christian church right now, by Jesus, as they say, or being saved by God through Jesus, and they're going to go up into the rapture, then if they take off and they leave the planet like some extraterrestrial move or something that's wiping out a part of the planet because they serve God and taking them elsewhere to where God is and where Jesus is, then you no longer have all nations coming to the mountain of the Most High when Israel is reestablished. You see what I'm saying? In order for all nations to flow, that means all nations are not getting salvation right now. It's Israel that the Most High is getting ready to deal with to reestablish them. True Israel. True Israel. All right? So all nations are going to still be around. Of course, we know through destruction, more wars is coming as part of end-time judgment and so on. A lot of people are going to die and so on. But there's still going to be the representatives of the nations here, right? Like the remnants or those that are left of the nations who didn't die. So they're still going to represent their nations, right? And they're going to come, right? But the nations are coming because the nations did not get any salvation. So there'll be no Christian fake rapture, right? Christianity isn't reaching nations for God. They're reaching nations for Christianity, for the religion that they're in. Verse 3, and many people shall go and say, come ye and let us go up to the mountain of the Most High. Now, if these nations have received Jesus, and Jesus is the answer, when the nations or the people in those nations who did not accept Jesus, and they see now, oh, wow, we weren't saved, and the rest of the people in our nations, they went into the rapture because they were saved. Wouldn't they then start to call on Jesus? Why are they going to go over to Israel when the Christian doctrine, they can now tell at that time at least, was true because they saw other people in their nations leave and go up in the rapture? Then Israel was never the answer, because the Christian doctrine proved it true that people who believed in Jesus went up into the rapture. Yet, instead of these people in the future deciding to call on Jesus to see if he might answer the merciful Jesus, instead of them calling on him, now they go to the God of Israel. Try to go up to the mountain of the Most High, to go to real Israel, when real Israel, children of slave ship descendants, children, when real Israel is established, the real Israel that Hitler was killing, a lot of them in African areas and so on, but they only tell you that the people who are now called Israelis were the ones, the 6 million that were slaughtered. They don't tell you about the others, that the many, like the larger number that he slaughtered. Right? When real Israel is established again, they are going to go after the God of Jacob. Nothing is saying here in prophecy that people in the end times are going to be calling on Jesus. So you're telling me that Jesus goes through all of this suffering, trying to align himself with Kidron Valley and all that kind of stuff, and to show, oh, sacrifice accepted and all that. And he takes a certain group of people who are quote unquote ready and takes them in the rapture. And then people realize, oh, something's going real wrong here. We're going to all die. Judgment's coming up on us now. We want to be saved. And instead of him saving more people, coming and saving more people, or leaving a way for them to find him, he's going to watch them run to the old covenant God of Israel, the old covenant Israelites teaching the law. They're going to run to the old law that Christianity said is so not good and so done for, that Jesus came and set up this other promise of the rapture. He's going to watch them run back to something that is no longer good, the law, according to what Christianity teaches, right? You see the trickery of Christianity? If the law was no longer good, Jesus would not position himself to take off and leave in a rapture and capture a certain number of people who are quote-unquote saved, according to New Testament teaching. Know that the only way for them to be saved is in the New Testament rapture. And have them be saved like that, and then when the rest of people from the nations are left, realizing that they should have been saved, but they never gave their heart to Jesus, never gave their heart to God, and now they need to be saved. Now they're going to go and get salvation from something that no longer is able to save, which is the law. You see the problem? You see the theological problem that the New Testament has? If the law is done away with, it cannot save. So even if the rapture has already happened, nobody can go up there from the nations to the mountain of the Lord and get saved. And the trickery of the Christians is to tell you, well, because the rapture has already happened, then if you go align yourself with Israel, then you can get saved. Get saved, my foot? The law has no power while Jesus' so-called New Testament doctrine is here. which is now the real power, it seems. The real power is now the Jesus doctrine, the grace doctrine, the new doctrine, the New Testament doctrine. It has the power. So when it being the power leaves the earth because of the rapture, now there is zero power left on the earth. But somebody's going to go from the nations and go and find power from a God with a broken old law, old style law that proved with the power of Jesus that it has no power to save anyone. And people are going to go and get salvation from that. It's like missing some kind of rescue boat and trying to swim down under the water in the ocean to a broken, capsized ship that already has sunk, already gone down, and because you missed the real rescue boat for some reason, you missed it. Now you're going to go try to submerge yourself, go under the water, and go and find rescue or salvation in the ship that sunk so long ago, and get saved in that ship at the bottom of the ocean. Give me a break. You too much into thinking of New Testament theology, whether you're Christian or Hebrew or whatever the hell you are. You got to start using common sense. Even your New Testament, Paul says, I would not have you be ignorant, brethren. Why the hell are you still being so ignorant in your thoughts to think that if your pastor tells you the New Testament is it, then it is it? Can't you use common sense to think for yourself once in your life that if you have to go down under the water to the broken ship that sunk, that there is a common sense problem with thinking like that? If the law is done away with, or if that ship that sunk because it was broken is done away with and cannot save you anymore, so the rescue team has to send a rescue boat, then the only rescue possible is with the rescue boat. Now, if the rescue boat takes off, like with the rapture taking people off to another place they call heaven, if the new rescue that is set up has completed its mission and is gone, there should be no salvation for you when you think in scriptural terms now. Right? That is why the God of the Old Testament talks at different points about destroying. Why? Because if you don't keep the Old Testament law, the only law there is that converts the soul, you have missed it. You have missed it, right? So to continue here, mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Most High from Jerusalem. How can the law go forth at that point after the rapture? What point would there be if the law is done away with? What point? I have people, asking me these questions and about how the New Testament can really be true. People that I never dreamed would be interested in any of this Israelite stuff, in any of this Old Testament stuff. And some of them are interested, some of them not. But at least the ones who are not interested in the Old Testament law know. They're starting to figure out, the ones that are contacting me, knowing that something is wrong with the New Testament. Just had one guy contact me yesterday, I'm just like, oh man, and I always knew there was something fake with this after I explained a few things to him, and telling me, and I'm forced to have to teach this. And some of you are judging people out there. I didn't look at the guy and say, oh, you're not of our nation, whatever. The man is asking, he wants to learn. If a sojourner came into Israel back in the day, in Old Testament times, and they wanted to learn the ways of the God of Israel, the Israelites would teach them. So the man asked questions, I gave him answers. And he felt better off for his answers. I hope now he goes and he really looks into it deeper. But he was receptive, he was glad for the knowledge, the understanding, the scriptures I gave and so on, right? And telling me at the end, that just makes so much sense. I always knew there was something wrong with the New Testament, but I just couldn't figure it out. But I always knew something was there, something was wrong. and then says to me as well, and I'm forced to have to teach it in Sunday school. Why? Because he's part of a Christian church that's forcing him, making him, according to his position. I don't know what else he does in his church, but obviously he's a Sunday school teacher, and he's forced. If he gives it up, he's going to be, ostracized or whatever, or he's going to probably be sitting down twiddling his thumbs doing nothing, and, whatever this situation is there, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But he's forced to have to teach this in his school, in his church. Forced is the word he uses. You see, one by one, people are breaking away from this New Testament. They know something is wrong with it. They know it. All right? And so if they're going up to the mountain of the God of Jacob, the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways, is what it says, then why are they not going to the God of Jacob to find Jesus, the real salvation? Why aren't they going up to the house of the God of Jacob saying, look, we missed the rapture and that's the real deal because we know the law is done away with. Can we, is it too late? Can we, now my heart is into this now. I really want to accept Jesus now. He's your son, isn't he? Can't I get in? My heart is ready. I've abandoned everything else of this life. This is it for me now. I'm ready. And why shouldn't they be able to say that they're ready? It's obvious that this verse is saying at the end, salvation is still being offered. So if it's still being offered, shouldn't it be through Jesus? Why aren't they saying, but you are the God of Jesus? In other words, you are the Father of Jesus. Well, if you are the Father, if you are his Father, and you sent him, can't you tell him, hey, have some mercy on me since he is so merciful? Don't tell me time for mercy is done. That's a lie from the Christian doctrine. A lie from the Christian church. Because this verse here in Isaiah chapter 2 verse 3 is showing that mercy is still being given out. Because people are able to go and learn of the ways of the God of Jacob and find salvation. So this thing about the Christian rapture and then mercy is done at that point and it's too late, you should have done it when you had the chance, that's a lie. Think for yourselves and stop believing all that you are taught in the Christian church. It is a lie. And now if we think back now to the Kidron Valley, they tried to make us feel that as 250,000 lambs were slain there in this place for the, might I just say in a New Testament way, the salvation of the church of Israel. So it is that Jesus, the real lamb, the most powerful lamb, the lamb of Calvary, slain from the foundation of the earth, is crossing this Kidron Valley with a temple up the top of it and so on, and he's going to the Mount of Olives to pray and so on, and he's going to be the real lamb, the real sacrifice, to be slain as 250,000 lambs were slain at times, with the blood flowing down. Here is my problem to close out this recording. Every one of those 250,000 lambs that were slain and their blood ran down the Kidron Valley, once they died, having been slain by the priests, they remained dead. Yet we are told that this lamb, who's supposed to be coming to do the same thing as the lambs that were slain in the Old Testament, he resurrected. Now do you see why they put this, trying to prove the resurrection in the New Testament? Because without a resurrection, they can't pull off the whole doctrine of salvation in the New Testament. Everything had to be done the way it was done in the Old Testament. That's why they even throw in this, they're trying to bring it back in their talk here, in their article about the Kidron Valley and so on. And that's why they say Jesus fulfilled this, he fulfilled that, he was a type of this, that was a type of that, and he was a fulfillment of this and that. Because they're telling you, if it can't be shown about him, it's false. If in his life you can't see what happened in the Old Testament, then it's false. So they have to show the things in his life that resemble the things in the Old Testament and say he was the real type of it all. Yet, for the sacrifices to be offered in the Old Testament, those lambs remained dead. Not one lamb did I ever read of in the Old Testament books or in any extra biblical writings ever got slain by a high priest, and the next week after he had been dead and offered up, the next week he was walking around downtown, across town, down the street. He would never be seen. Because for the sacrifice to be offered, he had to remain dead. The point was to give some kind of life force. Some life had to be taken away from something that was living and would never return unto it in order for the sacrifice to be accepted. But Jesus apparently gave his life, and in 3 days he was up and walking about. Use your damn mind.